On this episode of the Layover Live, Veronica Williams stops by to talk about Apple's mail privacy protection. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 188 of the Layover Live. I'm Jason Swick, VP of Strategy and Insights here at SimpleView, and thank you once again for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us. When Apple's mail privacy protection rolled out in September of last year, digital marketers were certainly anxious in anticipation of how this might affect their email performance metrics and just email in general. Now, knowing that email marketing is such an important channel to destination marketers, I wanted to circle back 1 year later to share some of the impact that we are seeing and discuss any new metrics we might encourage DMOs to focus on. So to talk about how Apple's Mail Privacy Protection, or MPP, is impacting DMO email, I'm joined by Veronica Williams, who is the Manager of Marketing Automation at SimpleView and our in-house email marketing expert. So Veronica, welcome back to the show.
Hey Jason, great to see you too. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm happy to have you back now talking about some of this stuff. I know we've had some articles coming out of your department talking about this of late and just some of the things that have happened. Email is such an important channel for DMOs, especially as we're talking about the deprecation of third-party cookies and all the things that are going to happen on that side. First-party data is more important than ever. Now, last time I had you on was like a year ago. I think it was episode 165 back in August of 21. And we discussed maybe how these updates were really going to affect email at that time. So, before we start to jump into some of the effects, let's just give a reminder to everyone maybe about what Apple's MPP is, how it works, all that kind of stuff. So I'll turn that over to you to explain that.
Definitely. So yeah, we did talk a little while ago back in August, and that was right before MPP was to be released in September, late September. And kind of how it works is starting with iOS 15, when somebody downloads the update and any updates after that, they receive a pop-up that says, would you like to protect your privacy? And of course, everybody wants to do that. And when they do that, it turns on two different features. The first one is they can hide their IP address. So, people like us who are marketers, we don't know where they're coming from. And the other thing is they are able to kind of block us from knowing if they've opened any emails. And if they do select that, what happens is, in emails currently, we have something called the tracking pixel. And the tracking pixel, when it gets downloaded, when someone opens their email, that's when we know exactly when they opened it. However, with Apple, they're going to have the email when we send it go through a proxy server, and it gets opened instantly. So we're not really able to know if the email really gets opened by somebody or the day and time. So that's kind of how it's working right now.
Yeah, not fun for email marketing when it first came out. I remember how we started to work through some of this and everyone's like, oh my gosh, like what's this going to do to our email open rates and some of these things? So it kind of brings up the next question I want to ask you is, now that we, have like this year of data under our belts, right? I know it's something that you and the team keep a close eye on. We're really, I know, starting to see some of the effects of these updates over the course of this year. Could you maybe share what you're seeing in the data, Veronica, on your side, and maybe how this has affected things since the rollout? Because I think the data part's really, really important.
Oh, it is, definitely. What we're seeing is right after September, through October of last year, and really starting in November, a dramatic increase of open rates. And it's, everybody we're talking to is like, yeah, I have these great open rates, but you have to take into account that they're kind of inflated, because now, depending on how many Apple users you have that have privacy protection turned on, it's going to look like there are all these opens. And so that really is a false open that's happening. And looking at the number of people who are adopting MPP, it's reporting that it's almost at 100%, which makes sense, especially with them saying, do you want to protect your privacy? So what we're seeing is with those inflated open rates are getting really high, where your click to open rate, which is taking the number of unique clicks and dividing it by your unique opens, that's going way down. And that was something that we were using to try to figure out how engaged your email recipients were. But it's not as reliable now, unfortunately.
Yeah, and it makes sense. That makes sense that that ratio would be off too, because if it's an inflated open rate, right, it's certainly going to draw the other numbers down. It's just part of that equation, right? So, it is really then, I guess it probably begs the question that probably everybody's thinking about right now is that, is email open rates even an effective metric to even look at anymore? And then I want to follow up on that if it is not as reliable, and it sounds like it isn't, and something that we shouldn't, it's not as important, something to keep an eye on, but it's certainly not as important as it was before. So if it's not, what should we be focusing on more moving forward for a more accurate measurement? Maybe you could share, your thoughts on email open rates from an accuracy standpoint, and should we measure it? And then maybe, what else should we maybe be looking at if we're trying to really look at accuracy or see if our emails are really engaging?
Yeah, you have it exactly right. That open rates, if that's something you're just relying on solely to look at metrics or KPIs, it's not going to be reliable, just since it does have all of those false opens or inflated opens. So what people do is, or what they need to do is to look at other ways to measure, like you said. And one of those ways is to look at clicks. They can look at their click-through rate, because no matter who is opening the email, if it's Apple or who, it's always going to be, we know it's the person who clicked on those links. And so that's going to be something that people really need to start looking at, is their click-through rate. And what we found so far with looking at all of our different clients is that the ones that are more affected are going to be your consumer or your B2C list versus your B2B ones. Because in B2B, people are using more of the Microsoft clients, something like that, versus, always on the Apple ones. And they really need to start changing their mindset of what would be a metric and what would be a KPI. And what we're telling people to look at is start looking at how people interact with your brand as a whole, not just the email side, but everything.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense, right? I mean, we probably should have been doing that anyways, right? We often give advice on KPIs around looking beyond just some of the higher level type metrics, right? And then looking more at performance and engagement metrics, conversion metrics, bottom line metrics. Those mean more. It doesn't mean don't look at all of these things, but you got to look at all the way through, right? Like, those are indicators of ad performance or content performance, but they're not indications of whether someone completed a desired action that I want to. So your advice about looking at click-through rates, certainly absolutely important, but then even looking to see how many landing page visits am I getting from my email, how many visitor guide downloads. Those are probably more important and more meaningful to tell you how people are engaging with that. So, that kind of leads me, I think, into this last piece because of your expertise in this space, Veronica. So maybe what advice do you have, for DMOs of what they could do maybe to start properly measuring success, or just advice for email in general moving forward now that we have these changes underway for a year?
Oh, yes, definitely. It goes along with my last comment about talking and looking at things as a whole of how their users or their newsletter recipients interact with their brand. And one way to do that, kind of what I think you were alluding to, would be to look at, are they going to your website? Are they filling out forms, downloading media like the visitor guide? What interactions do they have with your brand or with your destination further than just the email? And, traditionally people will look at the past 180 days, 6 months, to see which people are engaged. And if you start adding in those other metrics or those other areas and taking away the open rates, you will most likely see a drop in your number of engaged, but these are going to be your true engaged. And those are people that are not only going to, open your emails, click on things, go to your website, go to more pages, but they're also going to be people who are going to help with your deliverability to get your email in the inbox, because people like Gmail and Outlook, they want to, see you having engaged people. So that's definitely something to take into account, is to look at all those other areas. And they also want to work alongside their SEO team, because what they're doing on their website can truly track back to the email side. One example is, they have all those book now links, all those links to book the hotels and attraction tickets. If they can work with their SEO team to find out, which ones are the more important ones or the ones that get more attention, then they can, segment off their email list and start targeting people to those areas of the website. So it's really going to be, working with other teams and just expand their thinking. It's not about, who's opening their emails. It's what led them to subscribe to the email and then what they do after that they need to look at.
Yeah, well, how about that? Right, serve them the content they actually want. What a concept. I mean, that really helps to think about that. But it's something that I think as we get caught up in the day-to-day sometimes, we kind of forget those things and really what the intent of someone's focus is. Why they signed up in the first place. Are they engaging with the content? Once they're clicking through, what are they doing once they get there? Is there other friction points I need to think about that I can work with my SEO team or even my CRO team from an A/B testing standpoint to really help for that stuff? So absolutely great advice, Veronica. I appreciate you coming on. It's good to kind of check in on one of these things are at. And would also encourage anybody out there as well, if you're working with Veronica or somebody else on the team, these are great experts to tap into for any insights that you want around this. This group also has the ability to look at industry averages and things of that nature to really help you with this. So Veronica, thank you so much. Good seeing you again. Thanks for stopping by.
Yeah, thank you so much. I had so much fun. Thanks, Jason.
You bet. And thank you for sharing your day with us as well. If you're not subscribed, please do so now. We're also available on podcasts through Spotify and iTunes. So thanks for tuning in, everyone. We'll see you next time. Have a great day.